My thesis is an exploration of material transformation. This area of interest stems from the way I prefer to work, investigating boundaries and absolute definitions of everyday objects in order to challenge what we may think we know about their predefined role. Looking back over my work this semester, I've realized that, while it wasn't intentional, transformation was a reoccurring theme. It began in micro-thesis. As is intended with this project, I began work quickly and tried not to overthink. With type as my topic, I started with an idea from type designer Marta Bernstein. Display typefaces embrace the spirit of their time. That idea intrigued me. The notion that a display typeface is not a trend, but a timestamp of a moment. That week, I conducted a series of experiments, seeing how a letter form could be affected by external factors. I experimented with the idea of temperature in P5.js. I used studio lighting to experiment with shadow and light, and I manipulated printed images on the scanner to explore the idea of time. In reviewing my final studies, I found that I was most interested in the legibility and boundaries of the forms I had created. At what point does an A stop being an A? I consciously carried this realization with me into charrette. A conversation with my parents led me to realize that our assigned pinwheel was also an icon. In looking into the history of icon design, I came across a lecture by Susan Carr, the first pixel artist at Apple. Many of the icons she designed while at Apple are still in use today, in part because of their simplicity. They were all designed on a 32 by 32 pixel grid. I decided to take a similar approach and break the pinwheel icon down to its most basic component, pixels. I zoomed in until the pinwheel became solid blocks of color. This action posed a similar question as my last project. At what point can you no longer tell it's a pixel? From here, I began to think about how I might translate this process to 3D. I went ahead and built a physical pinwheel, and though the shape didn't hold up, it was still an object that I could document. After photographing the initial images, I found myself wanting to zoom in on these too. The end result was a series of physical and digital pinwheel pixels, seen here. My site project began with an audio recording from outside my window. I auto-transcribed the audio, but the language got lost in translation. And make sure you order your masks became, and make sure you order your magic. The idea of translation stuck with me, what was gained and what was lost in the process. A few days later, I was assembling an IKEA cart in my studio when I realized that the pictorial instructions I was following were a visual translation of the assembly process. I grabbed my camera and documented individual pieces of the utility cart, then printed out the images to collage them. Though I liked the collage, the window element was absent. I translated the image collage from the cardboard to the window. Doing this physically brought about a clear division between the two images, bringing to attention a general feeling of discord. I combined them together digitally so that they're both in focus. Doing this, and translating them to black and white, suggested an even broader tension between the images, making them even more unsettling. What I initially thought of as a simple juxtaposition between cart and trees was actually suggestive of much broader tensions. In our final assigned prompt, Influences, I chose to respond to both Aaron Sheriff and Darren Harvey Reagan's work. In photographing new parts from Pick and Pull, I noticed some curious matchups that caught my attention. Their like shapes suggested a schism that was similar to my collage work. I wondered if I could recreate this in physical form. I did so using parts from Pick and Pull. When I went to photograph the new object, I realized I was more interested in the shadow that was being produced than I was the object itself. I realized as I documented these objects once again that I had translated them twice, first physical to digital and then back to physical and again to digital. For a final independent project, I intended to continue my exploration of material transformation by taking an unassuming object and putting it into an undefined situation. This idea quickly shifted, however, and became an exercise in documenting the findings I'd been gathering instead. I created both a book and a website to categorize all the information, but felt as if I was organizing, not making. And I was. But as Martin pointed out, this groundwork gave me a playground to work with. I started in for the final week by taking a similar approach as with charrette. I zoomed in. I pixelated a few images of cars, but it felt arbitrary. I zoomed out and began experimenting with replacing portions of cars with other cars. This resonated more. It was the digital version of the physical act, cobbling together components of different machines in order to make it a whole. I continued with the collages, combing through my photo archives, trying to find similar pieces with the same perspectives. I was working on combining these two shots when I decided to incorporate a photo of a spring with a different point of view. Surprisingly, or maybe not at this point in the semester, this was more interesting to me than any of the other matched shots that I'd created. This image seemed to sum up this place. Machines existing in tension, not quite matching up, but close enough to function. I wish I had a grand reveal or a finished series, but honestly, this is a work in progress, and I'm okay with that. I feel like there's so much potential in what I just discovered, and I'm excited to develop it further. Thank you.